Today I have Ranveer Chandra with me, and Ranveer doesn't need an introduction. He heads Microsoft Azure, and he has 100 patents. He is an IIT KGP alum and a phenomenal guy, and we are looking forward to talk to him. So Ranveer, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, that give us an idea about your journey, especially in last 20 years.
Yeah, really nice to meet you, Sanjiv. So my background is I did my undergrad from IIT Kharagpur in computer science in 95. After that, I did my PhD from Cornell, graduated with a PhD in 2005. So 99 to 2005, I was at Cornell. And 2005 is after I graduated, I would have become an academic. I interviewed in all academic places. I had an offer from UT Austin, but instead of going there, I decided to come to Microsoft. This was the only industry place I interviewed in. I came here in 2005 in Microsoft Research. Since then, since 2005 to 2018, I was doing different things in research. I was doing research on new networking technologies. If you're using the Xbox One, I designed the Xbox One wireless controller protocol. I did a lot of work on batteries. So one of the things in Microsoft Research that I did was every 5 years, I started a longer term project within Microsoft. So in 2005, I started a project called TV White Spaces, which uses unused TV channels to send and receive data. 2010.
So I have a question on that.
Yeah.
That's a very important one. And I'm sorry, that's very fascinating because you have used the technology. I watched several videos around white space. So I really get excited when you talk about white space. So can you go a little bit deeper into that? What it really means to our audience, basically?
Yeah, so with the TV white spaces, imagine if you have a Wi-Fi router and you could go several miles. Right now, as soon as you exit your house, your Wi-Fi disappears. Imagine if you could go several miles. And the way we did that was we took a Wi-Fi signal and we put it in empty TV channels. This is TV you watch using over-the-air antennas. Many of you would remember these antennas that you had on the rooftop and you moved it to get the signal. You know, when you browse through TV on certain channels, you get a transmission. The other channels, all you see is white noise. There's nothing coming there. The technology we built was a way to take, say, a Wi-Fi signal to put in these noisy TV channels so that it doesn't interfere with your TV reception in an adjacent channel. So you could be watching channel 7 at home. On channel 8, we could be sending Wi-Fi signals. And the reason this is so cool is that compared to Wi-Fi, at the same power level, in UHF TV channels, your signals go 4 times farther. In VHF, they go 12 times farther. And this is in free space. Once you put in trees, crops, canopies, buildings, your signals just keep going through. So this is the technology. Of course, this is at a very high level. We wrote multiple papers on this. The FCC chairman had come back in the day to see the demo we had put together. This was made legal in the US. This has since then been made legal in various countries worldwide. But that's the technology. Essentially, what we want to do is to bring internet connectivity everywhere, to solve the digital divide. So since 2010 that it became legal, we've connected high schools, hospitals, dispensaries in various parts of the world using this technology in Africa, in India, in Southeast Asia. So that's this technology, one of the technologies that I worked on.
So I have a question on that. I was reading it and, I'm a geek, so is most of our audience. I understand the concept of receiving signals, right? So it's a one way. How you make it like in and out, because in internet, there is a request and there is a response. So how do you create that with this technology?
Yeah, so the way this works is like you have a Wi-Fi router and you have a phone. Imagine, or you have a cell phone base station and you have a phone. Imagine if both of them, instead of operating in cell tower frequencies, they were operating in the TV channels instead. So then you would be doing both-way communications. It's not just downlink, but your device, your phone or your laptop, would have a separate radio and an antenna, and it could be sending data using that frequencies.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's brilliant. That's phenomenal. So in a way, can I say that it is going to beat a Starlink too, or no? You're far from there.
Can it be?
Can it beat a Starlink? Elon Musk is really pushing it, and there are a lot of, he's making huge investment.
Starlink is very interesting. It's using satellite connectivity. And that's one of the ways in which you could connect. This is complementary. So Starlink, what it does is it uses satellites, low Earth orbit satellites, to connect downstream. Imagine if it gets to one point and then you have TV white spaces to send it to the next 20, 30 miles from there. So this is the vision that we think, and we are working with Starlink. We are working with other companies that do satellite connectivity.
So it's pretty much like last mile connectivity when we talk about the villages, when we talk about even towns and other areas where you can really get a better connection with the in the rural areas. How about urban areas? Do you see this is going to solve the problem of urban areas too?
This could solve the problem of urban areas as well. It's complementary. So rather than thinking of it in isolation, we should think of this in conjunction with the other spectrum, say millimeter wave in 5G or any of the other spectrum that exists. This is very complementary to that, because what this will do is this stretches over several miles.
Wow.
While others, what they would do is they would do it in a very small space. Like we hear about 5G. In 5G, we talk about gigabit per second speeds. How do you get to gigabit per second speeds? One way to do that is do very short range communication. So I'll have, say, put in the mall and I'll use wide frequencies and millimeter wave and very short range. But at the same time, there are other scenarios where you want long range connectivity. Like, for example, if I'm going in I'm driving somewhere or things like that. So then you could use this as a handoff mechanism in urban areas. The other benefit that we found in urban areas is for warehouses or big buildings. Like if I have a warehouse, signals don't travel very well. This is an ideal frequency for that domain as well.
Interesting, very interesting. So what is the challenge? Why there is no universal adoption of technology like this? Because the band is already available. Everybody pretty much have this infrastructure. So
yeah, it will happen. I think this is the concept which we are calling dynamic spectrum access. Until now, worldwide, every spectrum regulator auctions their frequencies. As you know, in India, 3G auction, 2G auction, 4G, 5G auction. What that means is you have an auction and that entire band is reserved for the winner of the auction. But what if that frequency is never used? Now you can envision a future where even though certain frequencies have been allocated for certain purposes, if no one's using it, it's used by others. Like in this case, in the TV white spaces, it's allocated for TV, but if there is no TV broadcast, you can use it for wireless communication. And this is a concept that's slowly being adopted by the FCC and UK and some of the developed regions, and I'm expecting in the future it will get everywhere. And some of the countries in the developing regions are adopting this, and I'm seeing more adoption, like the TV white spaces. It's now legal in South Africa, in Kenya, in Malawi, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. So it's happening. It's happening. It could be faster, but as with spectrum, for example, it's a touchy issue sometimes. But I think it will get adopted.
So Rohit, a bolt-on question to that is when we talk about connectivity, that is everything today, we know that. With 5G, we know that the problem is the distance. You're putting towers pretty much like every single nook and corner. And a lot of interesting challenges with that. But to come back to the white space technology, and you have done a lot of work in virtual Wi-Fi, which is million plus download of that application even. My question is, what do you see? So for example, we have challenges, especially natural catastrophe. What happened in Florida, we had those challenges. Do you see application of your technology even in that?
Yeah, we do such deployments, especially in disaster scenarios where you have, like, the infrastructure is just gone, right? Like, for example, it happened in Puerto Rico in the hurricanes last year. And then we immediately sent our people there, we sent the equipment, and you could very quickly fire up a network, connecting the people, connecting the rescue workers who need connectivity too, to coordinate where to go. We did this in the floods in New Orleans. So we do this as well. And I think that's another use case of a very quick deployment of a network. Now, of course, there's a lot more to be done.
Do you need a special radio for this, or the regular phone works with that?
No, you need a special radio. But that's where we expect that these radios will become pervasive. There is a Wi-Fi standard called 802.11af. This is a Wi-Fi that can do multiple frequencies, including the TV white spaces. So we envision a future where this will just be embedded in every device. In fact, why just TV spectrum, right? I think in the future you'll have these chipsets that can go the entire spectrum. And yeah, that's a vision of the future. That's a researcher in me talking.
No, but extending it further, Rohit, because connectivity is everything. We know that, and if we can figure out a way how we can harness solar, it's the biggest thing. And there was a technology I was hearing a lot about is Li-Fi for longest time, and I don't hear that much. So what happened to that?
Yeah. So Wi-Fi is using light, right? So
Right.
LED is Wi-Fi. And that is very good for in-home, in-room communication. Like I have a light on top. Can the bulbs communicate with my phone? It can do high-speed transfers. But I think the key challenge there is you need both ends to be modified. And the reason was that in many cases, you have good Wi-Fi in the house. Although I still think there are many use cases of Wi-Fi. It might come up where you really need very high bandwidth. And for example, you can think of manufacturing floors or things like that too, where it might be a very useful technology. So this is the thing with technology. Usually it takes a cycle for it to take off. Like Wi-Fi, for example, it was invented in the early 90s. It didn't really take off until the mid 2000s. So I think we have to be patient to see it take off. Same with Li-Fi. I think it got the hype, it got a lot of buzz. Now there is a lull in that. I think it'll come back. I think there are use cases where Li-Fi would be a very interesting technology to use.
I'd like to say, Ranveer, on that is, first of all, you validate my point. Uh, Irrespective of where we see ourselves today, especially, with the COVID, there are a lot of challenges people are struggling, and there are a lot of problems we are dealing with, but there are opportunities. There are new frontiers we are going to find, and we will go and solve some of these problems in future. There is a lot of population. The Earth has a huge demand of resources, and we all want better quality of life. So how do you see this is going to pan out? And especially when we talk about agro and farm, because you have done a lot of work in that space.
Yeah, no, this is a challenge we all need to figure out. How are we going to feed the world? That is, there's so many more people, as you said, and their food habits are changing because people are more and more people are moving to cities. They're earning more. They want more food. It's not just about more food. You want to give them good food, nutritious food, and you need to grow this food without harming the planet. The water levels are receding, the soils are not getting any richer. How are you going to grow more food, more nutritious food to feed the planet? And that is a fundamental challenge. We all need to rally behind this and come up with ways to address the food problem. And in my own case, we started this project called Farm Beats back in 2014, 2015, that time frame. But this is not just, we are still scratching the surface. I think we all need to come together, rally together, bring the best in technology to the food sector, both in terms of digital plus genomics plus new food tech, lab grown meats, everything, bring everything together, and we might be able to make a dent and help feed the world.
So, Rohit, when we talk about farm beats, can you help our audience understand what exactly it is and where do you see this technology is going to be next 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah, so with farm beats, the key, so when we talk about the agriculture problem, right? So one of the most promising approaches to address the agriculture problem is that of data-driven agriculture. What we mean by that is being able to use data to drive a lot of decisions. Right now, when I started this project, even before that, I went and I talked to lots of farmers. In fact, my background is I did, when growing up, I spent a lot of time in India as well. And when I went over here, when I talked to farmers, what I realized is that every farmer knows a lot about their land. Some farmers, they can touch the sand and they know what's going on. Some farmers, one farmer, he would taste the soil and he could tell what's going on. They know a lot about the farm, but yet a lot of decisions they make about the farm is based on guesswork. Like how much water do I apply? Where do I apply water? Where do I apply nutrients? Where do I apply pesticide? Is all based on guesswork. So that is what led me to start this project, where the key idea was to empower, to augment a farmer's knowledge about their farm with data and data-driven insights. So that's what led to the start of the Farm Beats project. Of course, if you think of it, what does it mean, right? You want a farmer to know in real time what's happening with the farm, what's happening right now with data, and using artificial intelligence, predict what's going to happen in the future. How do you do that? Now, this seems like, you know what, we know how to solve IoT problems, right? We put in devices, we can get the data. The challenge with agriculture is that it's very hard to get a lot of data from the middle of the farm. These farms don't have great connectivity, going back to the TV white spaces issue. These farms, you can't really be putting multiple devices in the farm because that becomes very expensive. Like, for
Yeah.
example, suppose the problem was if I have a farm and I want to build a soil moisture map, what is the soil moisture level 6 inches below the soil? I would need a sensor every 10 meters, but you can't put a sensor every 10 meters. It's going to be expensive to deploy, to manage. It'll come in the way of the farmer. So these were all several reasons where we needed to come up with a way to significantly bring down the cost of data-driven agriculture solutions. And that's what led to the start of the Farm Beats project. With the Farm Beats project, what we wanted to do was come up with technologies to make data-driven agriculture affordable for all growers worldwide. So that's the vision of the future, where that can help you address the food problem, both in terms of the amount of food you grow, making the farmers profitable, as well as growing it in a sustainable way.
So I have a question, bolt-on question to that. So when we talk about, see, if I set up a phone network just for this phone, we remember what Motorola did, and the company almost went bankrupt, Iridium Network. However, why not a company like Microsoft or somebody else set it up more or less like a telco operation at the global wide, and you put the sensors everywhere, just like the antennas we are putting today, and provide this as a service, not just to the farmers. It can be used even for calamities. It can be for predicting weather. It can be used for even predicting the kind of fertilizer they should use. Hundreds of other data can be collected, and the data can be sent. Why there is no company like that? Is it the technology is not there, or is the vision is not there?
It's a great business model, and I think it will take off. And now, as you start making these systems more affordable, I think this is a great opportunity for the audience of this of this episode to see and think about these business models. I think putting together such a telco network, and in fact, this leads to an interesting idea about agriculture as well. That when you talk about rural areas, they don't have great connectivity worldwide, especially even in the US, right? If once you go outside the city, you don't have great connectivity. If you look at why don't you have great connectivity, right? Because, well, these network operators, these ISPs, they have very little incentive to put a tower when you're servicing, say, just 50 to 100 people, because it's so sparsely populated. But you can envision a future where these network operators are not just putting towers, they're putting the sensors, and they're providing agricultural services as well. So then you're not just providing internet connectivity, you're not just providing a pipe, you're adding value on top of that pipe through these value-added services. Like in this case, it could be an agricultural service. But I completely agree, this vision of having a network, not just a network, but network of sensors and devices and providing services on top, I think that will happen in the future.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
right.
and our audience have an opportunity. That's so cool. We found something very interesting for our audience. This is impressive. So, Ranveer, let's talk about it. Say, I want to do something like this, and I want to do a small POC, a proof of concept. Where do I start?
Yeah, I think there is this opportunity to go with, say, go in an area which has the most value, right? Like, for example, whether you want to go with a forest or pick an industry vertical. I think it could be agriculture. You could go with, say, the high value crops and start with that.
Let's go to grapes. Let's go to grapes. Let's go to wine industry, because these
Yeah.
are very temperamental, and
Right.
it's huge. And we right here in California, in Napa, we have, or Sonoma, we have amazing crop and a lot of farmers, and they invest a lot.
Right.
Money is important, but not so important when it comes to the quality of crop, because it's a from $2 to $200 bottle of wine difference. It's huge. So I wanted to start something like that in Napa. What do I do now?
Yeah, so there are two different models. One initial model you had was I put sensors and it's available to everyone, that data. That will probably not fly a lot in agriculture, because in agriculture, farmers care about their data. They don't want to necessarily give their data because they have this trust issue. That is, if this data gets in the hands of other people, they can squeeze you out of business. It's a competitive advantage. Like if they know when did I apply water, when did I apply fertilizer, what fertilizer did I use, if I used certain chemicals or did not use certain chemicals, there's that tension. But assuming if you can filter out and provide, that is, you say that I won't give all the data out, but I'll anonymize some of the data and give it out, then that could be one way. But irrespective, I think talking about a service like what you mentioned, you could have a network operator that says, hey, you know what, I'm setting up these towers here, and I'm going to be putting these sensors in your farm, and this is a service you can access, and this is the value. This is like a subscription service based on the sensors that the network operator is putting there. And then it's the additional value that the network operator can create and take a cut out of that. Say, suppose it can say that it's a concept which in agriculture, there's a new concept taking off called outcome-based farming, primarily being pushed by the agriculture companies, which
Yeah,
is,
not
yeah, so it
outcome.
is outcome-based farming, which is on based on your outcome. That is, you not only buy my seeds, but based on how much it delivers, the yield that you get, you pay me a certain cut based on that. So you could see it's while people are talking about outcome-based farming, part of it could be this network infrastructure, which could tell you how do you meet that outcome. Similarly, you could start providing this service to the ag finance companies. You have banks that give out loans to these growers. With such a network, you could be monitoring, you could be giving the right advice, preventing damage, creating, doing the interventions at the right time. So you can start creating a lot of services. Based on this service, you could be providing a service to the growers and also acting as an interface to the seed companies, the chemical companies, the ag finance companies, the retail companies, the government. So that's the kind of a new business model that is ripe to be taken for data-driven agriculture. Right now, the model is that the grower is going to go, the farmer will go and invest in the technology in the farm. Instead of that, you could take this burden away. There could be an intermediary which could be between the ag companies and the grower and providing services to both sides.
It is in the interest of our government too. And when we talk about feeding 4 billion people, so I'm purely thinking and trying to connect all the dots, Ranveer. So the big challenge we have it is the water is the biggest problem. We don't have enough water, clean water, to feed 4 billion more people. And if we continue to waste the water, which we are doing today, it's going to be a bigger problem. So the government's interests are aligned. I need enough good quality food. And as an infrastructure, I'm ready to put it like just the phone infrastructure people started putting in early 90s. And there was not, we didn't have many subscribers, so the price was high. However, governments can get engaged now, and they should be involved, in my opinion, to fund some of these initiatives, because in my opinion, it is no different than tracking tsunami. We have sensors all over the world to detect tsunami. Why not for farming? I mean, I don't understand that we talk about things about calamity. So when we are dying, that's the only time we are reacting. When there is a real problem, we are not doing anything about it. Don't you see that as a problem?
No, I agree, and this is something when I go advise governments, when I go talk to them in the US or in India, this is a point I bring up. Like the government has so many subsidies for agriculture. Like in India, they'll subsidize your sprinkler system, your urea that you apply. Why can't they subsidize digital agriculture as well? Because this is the future, and this is something which I think is important to subsidize digital agriculture as well. Wi-Fi based idea I mentioned, using Wi-Fi to sense soil. That's one thing for the emerging markets. Another thing we looked at was instead of drones, people use drones in the developed world. Drones are expensive. They cost like $1,000. They have battery issues. They also have regulatory concerns. So the question was, if you're not using drones, how can you get aerial imagery of a farm at very low cost? So the way we solved that problem was we're using helium-filled balloons. These are balloons that you like 4 to 5 feet in diameter. We built a mount where a farmer can put their smartphone with the camera facing down. It's tethered to the ground. You would just launch it up, and you could start getting images of your farm. You could walk around with it, and as you walk around, you get a complete. You can then stitch it together to create these orthomosaics, these panoramic views of the farm, which then flows into the entire pipeline that we built for farm beans. Need to keep pushing the boundary, because when people talk about climate change, the people who would suffer the most because of these climate change are these farmers, especially the smallholder farmers. They are not prepared for these untimely weather, for changes in what they've been doing for decades, what their ancestors have been doing for centuries. Now things change, they won't be able to adapt to it. So they need more help with technology. And I think these are some of the things we are doing, and all of us need to do a lot more to get them to start adopting these data-driven agriculture technologies.
So I think,
And
Ranveer, the problem is not just the cost. When I look back in my career of last 25, 26 years in technology and working in the GIS, GPS space, even car navigation, all those things, I did it way back in late 90s, designed the first vehicle location system of Singapore. The challenge is not the cost, I find. It is just one part of it. The problem is, how do you make it easy for people to understand and leverage? Because when you talk about $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 sensors, the value is not very clear. All we talk and I hear as a customer is a sensor. I don't hear the value. And that is the biggest challenge. Second problem I really see it is people like us who are in technology, we don't really look at their problems. If we give them the answer, which is like the term people talk about is actionable insight. Okay, I have the insight, I have the data, what do I do with that? There is no action there. So that is a bigger problem. And that's where, when you said people are concerned about sharing the data, answer is very simple to me and to them is, hey, if you don't share your data, nobody else is going to share the data, then there is no actionable insight. So you know about your soil, you know about your farm, and tomorrow there is something happening, you don't know. And that is where we can change the dialogue. And that's what happened when the telcos came in and they started installing these antennas and started changing the whole landscape of the city or village. Yeah. And today, you and me both know it's phenomenal what communication has done. It's just unbelievable how this little phone has changed our lives globally.
Yeah. And I think we need to think more in terms of solutions. I completely agree with you. And to do that with data sharing, we need to build primitives so they feel more comfortable sharing the data, right? Because as you've seen, like the average size of farms, more and more farmers are getting away from farming because they don't make much money. Like even in the US, more and more farmers are, and not just in the US, even in India. When I look back to where I grew up in Bihar, a lot of my friends there are no longer in farming. They're all in big cities, and they'll go pull a rickshaw, they'll do anything else, but they won't stay with agriculture. And I think we need to come up with a way where they feel that their profession is not under stress, is not under attack, and they can share the data without any of that fear. Once we can build that mechanism, that's a technology problem too, but it's also, and once we do that, we need to start building the other thing you mentioned, which is more end-to-end services, telling them what is that actionable insight, what do you have to do? You just can't give them the data. You need to get them to do something on top. Yeah.
So that's where the problem lies, in my opinion, based on my personal experience. When technologists like us, we talk about things, we say, oh, here is the data, but the poor guy doesn't know what to do with this data. Okay, oh, so have more water here, more fertilizer here. Oh, I have the wheat and I have the rice. It's just unbelievably, it's very difficult for a farmer and who is used to picking the soil and figuring it out what to do with this. So coming back.
As technologists, I think we think of a future, and I've seen this enough, where we think of a future where we are going to replace the farmer. Food should just be grown wherever it is, right? A lot of people talk about a vision where, why do you need farmers in the first place? I have a farm in Iowa, I have my computer, I can remotely run my tractor there to get it to seed, get it to water, and I have the food that ships from there through robots. I'm personally not of that viewpoint. I feel there has to be a human element in farming. I somehow think that adds that personal touch. With, like, it's the same way whether you trust a robotic doctor or you want to go to a human. I think it's the same thing with food, where I want that human touch. And if you want the humans involved, so this is a different technology problem. If you talk to technologists about a future which is completely roboticized, this is somewhere less and not as sexy, like where you're saying, you know what, there's still humans in the loop. How do you make those humans more profitable? How do you have to think about the farmer, you have to think about their profession and customize your technology problem for that. And for that, part of it is the cost, I agree with you, but the bigger thing is, how do you make it usable for these farmers? How do you add value? They would be willing to spend 1 lakh rupees in India if they can make 2 lakh out of it, right? So the point is, how do you get it to the point where the ROI is there for the
That
growers?
brings to my other question, Ranveer. Do you have any challenge for our audience?
Yeah, so I'm assuming a lot of the people in the audience are from IIT, are technologists, are really brilliant people who study technology, who are changing the world in everything that you do. I would suggest people should, in addition to the work that you do, think about the food that you eat and how you could apply your work, your knowledge to change the food that we eat. Be it an aerospace engineer who's building new planes, you could be thinking about drones and robotics. Be it a chemical engineer who's designing new chemicals, the things that are on our table. The same ideas could be applied to food. And like in my own case, I think I was able to take that leap from computer science to agriculture. Although I know a lot of people in the audience have made that switch from agriculture to computer science, have become technologists. I was able to go the other way. But the big challenge I will put to everyone is to think in terms of food, because food is intricate to everything who we are. We are what we eat. And being able to change that will make us more healthier, will help feed the planet, will help the farmers do much better. So I think the impact that you can create by applying some of your research, some of your day-to-day work in the context of food could create huge impact. And if you have ideas, do feel free to reach out. I would love to just get on a call and chat and brainstorm. I'm
Oh,
extremely passionate about food.
hundreds of those. So, Ranveer, I have only one more question. What role curiosity has played in your life?
Part of my work, at least before I moved to the product side, was very curiosity driven. No one really told me this is the problem that you work on. And that's one of the things I like in my role, in a science role, is you can pick your problem and then go after it. And a lot of my problems that like the TV white spaces or some of the battery work or farm beats was purely driven out of curiosity. And I think this thing, and the thing is, we never stop learning, right? Every day is, we are still learning new things. Like every 5 years, that's why I start a longer term project purely based on curiosity and looking forward to learn in that space. Like I talked about 2005 was TV white spaces, 2010 was about batteries, a completely different theme.
Yeah.
2015 agriculture, 2020, I know it's here. One of the things I'm investigating is sustainability, just understanding more and more about carbon, water, nitrogen, just trying to understand what is that balance and what can we bring as technologists. And a lot of it is the advice here for a lot of younger people who might be listening to this is you will never have the complete knowledge. Never be afraid to reach out to others who know more, because it's this kind of symbiotic relationships that can really lead to big innovations and disruptions in this space.
That's awesome. Thank you very, very much for your time. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev.